Welcome back, everybody, to County Talk, where we're talking about everything boring but important. We really kind of cover the nitty-gritty issues of what's going on in county government, things you may not know, things that taxpayers might be particularly interested in, things that affect your daily life. So we're going to dive right into county government today. I'm Sue Hansen. I'm one of your three elected county commissioners, and I'm here today with our Director of Planning and Development, Tallmadge, Richmond. And we're going to talk about planning. And this is something that comes up, and currently right now we're in the middle of a master planning process. So this is a perfect time to have a conversation about what does it all mean? What is planning? So Tallmadge, we're welcome.
Thank you.
And we're going to start from the beginning and sort of take this through sort of a process of what is planning, why it is. Tell us about your department. So let's start with what is planning and development.
Yeah, I think planning and development fits perfect with the premise of boring but important. It's no one cares about it until it matters, mm-hmm. and I think it matters for everyone. So planning and development is really the providing and planning for the growth, the physical growth of Montrose County. So we're kind of split into two departments. The more commonly known, the building department, mm-hmm. obviously is part of our department. So we review plans for building and issue permits when the buildings are built structurally sound to make sure people are safe. Similarly, planning has certain regulations for the physical development of ground, for how people use their property, how it's subdivided to make sure we have enough infrastructure.
And infrastructure being
roads, utilities, electric, sewer, water, mm-hmm. To provide for life.
Right.
So.
Okay. All right. So you have essentially the planning, you have and the building department,
yep.
and each of those. I think a lot of times, if you've never built a house or understood how it works, that you don't really realize you have to come to the county to get permission. And as I would guess, as a community grows, like Montrose used to be small, right? When I first moved here, there's 8,000 people. It's obviously grown since then, and so I think what was okayed then is not okay now, and sometimes that needs to be explained. So planning development, we're looking at the future, we're looking at growth, but why is that necessary? I mean, okay, we have to have infrastructure, but why do you want to have a plan?
Well, like you just said, I mean, when you moved here with 8,000 people, we likewise, as people here now, have to look forward to what Montrose County is going to be in 20, 30, yeah. 50 years. And
that's when I start getting sweaty.
Right, yeah. It's important to plan. Otherwise we're making snap decisions and mm-hmm. could potentially not be thinking of very important and necessary things for our kids and future generations.
So if you look at here, this is. I mean, we don't have in the county any subdivisions of this size, but this would be an example of what you'd want to plan for. Could you explain kind of what's going on in there?
Well, you're outlining. This is kind of a typical. Kind of a subdivision plat, a general sketch of what you're doing. You outline roads and where lots are. You have different sized lots. Something I love we're going to talk about master plan today. Mm-hmm. Transportation is a big element of the master plan. So something that this kind of shows is you'll notice there's only a couple cul-de-sacs. You'll notice the plan here is that these roads all connect. And that's a cool element of our transportation plan of the more connections we can make, the more options people have for where they can drive, the more congestion we take off if we can spread cars mm-hmm. out. So this is kind of a sketch plan for a subdivision, and we as the planning department would review this for any subdivision and make sure it adheres to our zoning and subdivision regulations.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of that, as you said, you want to make sure that you don't have a dead-end street for emergency if someone needs an ambulance, for instance. So more goes into the plan than just where your house is and where in a subdivision where it might be and is it close to water. There's a lot of other things to consider, which I think is what's so, I mean, fascinating, which kind of makes me sound like a dork, but fascinating about the whole planning process. So let's take a step back. So you have a team. Are you actually active in doing these plans, or do you have team members that help you do that? Or tell us a little about the infrastructure of the county.
Sure. So maybe I can explain who's on our team. We have a small enough department where I can do that pretty quickly. We have 2 members of the building department. So Pete Peterson's our building official. He reviews all building plans to make sure they meet building codes, and then does some inspections out in the West End and in Mayor. He's also our county sanitarian, so reviews septic plans. John Carls is our building inspector, so he does all the framing, insulation, final inspections throughout the Uncompahgre Valley in Montrose County. And then we have Evelyn Luna as our planning technician. She's kind of our one-stop, front-facing, great team member who answers a lot of questions, helps people through their building permit process and subdivision process. And Kim Fico is our planner, so she's reviewing a lot of these minor subdivision plats, and also does a lot of general inquiry answering. And then, yes, I'm involved in more of the larger subdivisions and reviewing those and make sure they meet regulations, as well as some more long range or comprehensive or controversial applications as well.
Right. So there's always something like, somebody wants to build and the topography won't allow them to do exactly what they want to do. So, you have to be flexible enough, right? Because we're not living in Iowa where everything is flat and you can just, parcel off different areas. So I imagine that provides some challenges from time to time. Topography and, dead-end roads and kind of, what it's going to run into. And then we have BLM land. And, so there's a lot to consider, I imagine.
Yeah, a lot to consider. And that some parts have been developed and some parts haven't been. That doesn't mean they never will be, but that could cause some tension where we're an ag community, right? So someone's been living next to a cornfield for 50 years, and then someone wants to come in and develop that. That can cause some tension.
Yeah, I do want to talk about that later because I think that's nothing gets people more riled up than somebody building in a place that they thought was theirs, but they didn't buy it, so it's not theirs.
Yeah.
But, sorry, Charlie. So it's not just that you just come up with a plan and say, oh, that's a pretty neighborhood. You have regulations that we've put into place. And so talk about the zoning regs, and then there are actual subdivision regs. So people that are building or maybe want to come here and have a new house, there's a lot more to it than just coming in, buying a piece of property, and voila, building a house. So talk about the zoning codes and what that really means.
Sure. Zoning regulations deal with how you can use your property and to what standard it needs to be used to protect you and to protect neighboring property owners. So zoning speaks to in each zone district you have a certain list of uses that you can use your property for this. The idea behind that is so we separate uses that can have negative impacts off-site. Meat packing plant, a slaughterhouse, something that's a little more intense can cause noise, dust, odor, the kind of those kind of things are specific to certain zones, to the industrial zone district, whereas low density housing is allowed pretty much everywhere because it doesn't have as intense impacts. So I guess. Kind of a call to the public when you're doing your due diligence of trying to find a place to live, looking at places to buy, you can look at a zoning map and have a general idea of the potential uses that could go on around you in the future.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I'm assuming that you have that conversation when someone comes in with a parcel and then you say, do you realize that there's a gravel reserve, like for instance, above you? And so according to our regulations, someone could put a gravel pit there, so that would be important to know. What are the kinds of things that are important for citizens to know before they actually build their house and have that?
Well, maybe going back to your comment of, if you don't own the property, you don't have control over what happens on that. That's up to the property owner and then the Board of County Commissioners for special use permits and approval of zoning. I think encouraging them to look at the zoning regulations to see what's potentially on them. And the master plan is a great topic as well. There's an element to the master plan called the projected land use map that shows where certain uses are encouraged. Again, part of the appendix of our current map has a gravel overlay, so it shows where gravel is. Where you might get a great perk rate for your septic system because there's gravel there, but that also means that's a potential for someone to want to mine someday. Because we all use gravel, we love it. But
well, you need it.
We need it.
And what is interesting is that, when we built our house, when we were excavating for the foundation, it was like we could have had a gravel pit. I mean, there's so much gravel we could, and we're on that ridge, so that could easily have happened.
Yeah.
I printed off the zoning regs here, and I just want folks that are watching to know that everything is available on the website, so you can get our subdivision regulations and our zoning regulations. They're boring but important to know what's here, because again, you have an assumption. You make an assumption of what you can do on your property because it's your property, and I would have that too. But in order to be courteous to neighbors and to accommodate for growth, we have to have some reasonable rules and regulations.
Yeah, and I guess I would also plug that we as staff know these regulations fairly well, and out of the 150 pages in there, we understand the average person does not want to read that, and probably most of it doesn't apply to them. So we're there for the public if they want to call, email, come into the office and talk with us.
Questions.
Yep.
Yeah, I think if you had more pictures, it would be helpful for me.
Accessibility might be an
little
issue.
color,
with that one now,
yeah. Anyway, I think it is interesting, and it's a lot to know. But again, we want to make sure that people realize that you're a resource. Your staff is a real resource and very friendly. I mean, people come in, they have questions. You're happy to work with them. I know a lot of the permitting and stuff can be done online, but even if someone has difficulty with that, you will help them on the computer so that they can figure out how to do that. Correct?
Yeah, we don't have the ability to do the application for them, but we have the ability to show how the system works and reference places they need to go to follow up with where they are in the permit process so they can follow along with us. And we've found that people are on there all the time. It's worked really well because it's so convenient to be able to use it whenever.
Sure.
For the first timers, it can be tricky, but we're there to help.
Right. Yeah, that's what I think is important, so people know that they have access. But I do want to underscore how important it is that people understand that in our area, it may not be the same as if you move from Delta County. The regs may be different, and they change periodically. So we just did a review, I think maybe a year ago, of our regs. We had considerable public input. People came to the meetings and said, "I don't think that's right." And so, where we can, we consider those kinds of suggestions. It can be a very public process, but convincing someone to come and read through all these pages is a difficult sell.
Yeah, no, it is, and that's why I said it. You don't care about it until it's affecting you and your property.
Yeah, and then you go, "What?
Yeah,
I'm not allowed to do that?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?" I just envision. I lived in Grand Junction in the early '80s, so moved there in '79, and that was when the oil shale boom was happening, and they had the planning process. The planning department was way behind, and so there were houses built all over the place. Some of the rules that we would have in here about where to place things was people were just making up as they go along. Sorry, Grand Junction, but so that's why it's so important for us to have a plan. And right now we are undergoing and periodically we go through a master plan. When I first got here, I think our master plan was done in 2010.
Yep.
Guess what we're doing now? Right?
New one.
Yep. So let's talk a little bit about that because we want as many people to be involved in that as possible. It is important for people to understand what happens in a process. So let's talk about the master plan and what it really is so people understand.
And I think I guess it depends on people's perspectives. I think some people might have that same view on Montrose, that Montrose County is behind, but we're doing our best to make sure we take all that into consideration and aren't behind moving forward. So, we started the master plan process last summer. We hired a consultant, contracted consultant to write the plan since we don't have the staffing to provide for that now. We had kickoff meetings in November. we had a good turnout. We got a good public participation during those meetings. Those were mainly to gather the values and vision of members of Montrose County.
Like what people wanted to see of their community.
Yep. What they most care about and prioritize. Based on those visions, the consultant's has started a first draft of the master plan, and the Planning Commission's reviewing that now. We're slated to review that release that first draft this month for public review and public comment on that, because that's who it's for. That's what we care about. And then a couple weeks after the release, we're going to have some public meetings. And whether you're available to go to the public meetings or not, there will be opportunity to either generally comment, hey, this plan sucks, this plan's awesome, or get down to the nitty-gritty of, hey, on page 72, third paragraph, that fourth line, there's some language that says this. I think it should say this, or I love that language. So, and you can see it's a balancing act. Maybe someone loves a certain section, the next person does not.
Right.
So it's a
hopefully you
tricky
get enough people for every section.
Yep, exactly. That's why it's important to voice your opinion, because if no one does, we don't hear it,
right,
and might miss it. So.
Right, and commissioners, because ultimately we look at that, and your planning commission it's their document. So as they are the front gate of any kind of planning process, which we probably should go back and talk about in a minute, but the Planning Commission, which is a group of volunteers, 7 members that sit on the Planning Commission and review things prior to us seeing them. So that's where you allow a lot of public comment, which doesn't stop ever. Public comment can happen, throughout the process. So you got a lot of people engaged in the master plan. What was the feel of? Could you summarize what people want Montrose to be? Would you be able to even give a?
I guess I could speak to hot topics. I think a couple elements that are crucial to this master plan process. One is transportation. I think a lot of people are, sorry for banging the table, I think a lot of people are frustrated about congestion on the south corridor of the highway there. So alternatives to that are a big point of discussion and a high value for county residents. Land use is another big one, and that's, in my opinion, the focus of the master plan. Land use, where do we encourage certain special uses or certain uses that could be compatible if they're in the right place with certain conditions to mitigate any potential negative impacts? Where should we encourage those types of uses? So, and we've had special uses that are controversial over the last few years. So I think people that have been involved in those processes are saying, hey, the master plan's a good starting point to how we can avoid controversial issues but still encourage growth.
Yeah, and allow people freedom to do what they would like to do on their public land. I don't think that the commissioners nor the Planning Commission want to restrict people from getting to have full use of their property. Excuse me, we just need to know that we have some guidelines that we need to look at. So transportation is a super big deal. Our boundaries are public land. So as a planner, does that provide or present some special challenges to planning? Because, right?
It can, yeah. And that's actually was brought up in the moratorium. Part of the purpose of the moratorium was we were having some proposals for some facilities in wildfire hazard areas, because they were proposing campgrounds and things up next to BLM, because that's typically kind of where you want to be camping. You don't want to be camping downtown Montrose.
No. Yeah.
So we had some proposals, and I think the board noticed, hey, there's some potential negative impacts if we have a bunch of out-of-towners camping in a wildfire hazard area. So yeah, public lands is definitely a big. Obviously, we don't have any jurisdiction over that, but it's definitely a big part of.
But you can't
our
build
planning.
it, and we don't own it. It's not private property, so there is a natural boundary to the growth that Montrose could have, at least going east to west.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about the goal of the master plan, how long it should really last. Is it an etched in stone process? Are we done with it and check a box, or how do we look at that?
Sure. So I guess first off, the master plan is a guiding document. As you said, it's adopted by the Planning Commission, where the subdivision regulations and zoning regulations are recommended by the Planning Commission, but that ultimately adopted by you, the Board of County Commissioners. And those are regulations where the Planning Commission encourages and guides different developments. It's not a checkbox. It's not something we're done.
Yeah.
We put it on a shelf and it's gone. We use the master plan in every application that we get. Every subdivision, we go to the master plan. What does the master plan have to say about this location and about this proposal? Same with special uses we've talked about already, but that's a big one. The current master plan, you'll see in any staff report for a special use, it says the master plan does not speak to special uses, and that's not very helpful. So we're changing that, and the new plan will speak to special uses. So it'll be able to guide
certain things can happen in certain areas.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Encourage it in certain areas, avoid it in certain areas that wouldn't be safe or well for anyone. So yeah, that's nice. And then typically the master plan's looking out about 20 years into the future. And then the idea would be to update it every 5 to 10 years as the communities change. I think communities are changing faster and faster all the time. But so yeah, it's a living, breathing document that's always looking 20 years out or so.
Toward the future. Yeah, I think it's people mistake it that, here's the master plan, and once they see it, then if the commissioners or the planning commission, for instance, or if a private citizen wants to do something, they can still pursue that. The master plan doesn't prohibit anything. It's not like a zoning code.
Right.
And so I think people need to understand it's a guide. It's not etched in stone. And I want to keep saying that because you'll have someone say, "Well, you said that in the master plan this should happen." Well, nothing is so cut and dry that that you can't have an option for a waiver, for instance, or something like that. That's not something we necessarily want to do. That's why we want to think out how the plan looks. So you're going to have the master plan in Montrose at the Montrose County Event Center. Can we tell people what those dates are for those?
Yeah, so second week in June. You've probably seen this type of image on social media if you're following Montrose County. So second week of June is all the meetings. The first meeting is in Montrose at the Event Center. And all this information is online as well. If you go montrosecounty.net to the planning and development page, it's on there. So Monday the 10th, the meeting's in Montrose. On Tuesday the 11th, we're holding a public meeting in the West End in Natarita. And then on the 12th, on Wednesday, we're having 2 meetings, one in Mayer and one in Olathe. And dates, times, and locations are, again, all online. But I think it's important to hold these meetings at each location because each of these 4 locations has different characteristics, values, and so hearing from each of those folks is important. The other thing I'd add is this open house is going to be a little different. The last round of open houses in November was very open. This one is more, there will be a presentation at the beginning and then time for comment at different sections.
So they'll have a draft drawing of the master plan so people can look at it?
Right.
Okay.
Yep. And it'll also be available online beforehand. So so you're not coming, and this is the first you're hearing about it, you have a couple weeks to marinate on it.
Good. So when's the goal to finalize this? Is there a date that we've got in mind?
Yeah, so October is the kind of the drop dead date that we're looking at. So first draft in June, the rest of the summer we'll be taking the feedback we get from that first draft and then putting together a final draft.
Yeah, so let's just talk a little bit about how important it is for people to be involved. We talk almost every show that I do, I try to hook it to how we would like people to be engaged. It really does matter when somebody comes to you beforehand while you're in the planning process to say, have you thought of this? Or, this is what happened in another community. Is this something that you would consider? It's really helpful to have that kind of input. So I want to encourage people to call you. I mean, if they can't make one of the meetings, call Tallmadge and chat with them and, jot down some ideas that you have. I'm sure you're open to that. You're open to all kinds of public involvement. So I want to underscore how important it is for us to get as much input as possible. And I love that you're going to each of the small towns. I think Mayor wants to be left alone. I mean, it's all farming and ranching, so it's just beautiful over there. So that's the master plan, and that's a really critical document for us because it really helps us to be able to think about, well, what does the master plan say? And it's true in every one of your documents that you give when we're doing a review, it says this is in compliance with what the master plan guidance is. But I missed something that I wanted to go back to. So it's not just the planning department. We also rely heavily on the planning commission. Could you explain about and that's kind of the front. Once an application comes through, it'll go to the planning commission for a review. So talk a little bit about that process and how dedicated those volunteers are.
Yeah, they're so dedicated. I love our planning commission. They're 7 members. Right now we have 6. We have 1 open seat. So plug. Send your applications in if you're interested. But yeah, they dedicate a lot of time and effort to reviewing these, whether it's amendments to regulations or reviewing individual applications and flushing a lot of it out before it gets to you. So it works really well where it's a staff review per the regulations, goes to the planning commission. They flush a lot of the concerns that neighbors might have. They flush those out, and then they make a recommendation to you as the board for approval, denial, or approval with changes. So yeah, they're appointed by the Board of County Commissioners, and their job is to represent the people. And they do a good job of that.
Yeah, and I think it's great that we have folks that have ag interests and have other special interests. Some people have come from big cities that have a different perspective. So I think that's a diverse group of people.
We do have a diverse group, and their specialties are diverse as well. They know water, they know ag, they know things that are definitely applicable to the county. So
it's really
helpful.
And that I don't think people understand the complicated things you have to consider. It has to go to the irrigation, it has to go to the water users for a review, it has to go to the utilities. So it's not like a slam dunk. You just don't go in and jot a little sketch down and voila, this is done. So I want to thank the Planning Commission because the fact that we have all sorts of boards and you can always go to our website if anybody is interested in serving. But we do have one opening on the Planning Commission. Be really nice to have someone that was as committed as the other commissioners are. But I love that they bring us a recommendation. So they kind of do the hard work first and alert us. And so I like to go on and listen after the Planning Commission has had their meeting and the recordings are posted on our website. I like to listen to those because then that helps me. What are they concerned about? It brings my attention to certain areas that I should be thinking about. So it's very helpful.
Yeah, and they do a good job of listening to the public's concerns and we have a new system as of late of, hey, we got to address each of the public's concerns. If we can't, what can we do to try to balance this out? So.
Yeah, and in my experience, I've been here 6 years. I've had citizens that have come, and they've made some really great suggestions or comments. Have you thought of this? And I find that just so helpful to have. It's like we have a whole resource of people.
Yeah.
So you just sort of mentioned the moratorium and wanted to go back and explain that a little bit. We did put a moratorium on solar and any RV development and some other kinds of things. Let's explain that and what that looks like.
Yeah, so the moratorium applies to the general agricultural zone district, which is 95% of the county is in that district. So for any power generation facilities, the zoning regulations allow power generation facilities by special use. The moratorium kind of delays that, so we are not accepting any new applications for power generation facilities, campgrounds, or RV parks. And the reason is to redo this master plan, to speak to that a little bit more in terms of locations that would be discouraged,
right?
That may have potential negative impacts, as well as come up with use standards. For example, for solar, you brought up, our current zoning regulations don't have any use standards. And I think that's worrisome to most of Montrose County, being that reclamation is a big deal. We gotta make sure we're looking after, again, our future 30-year selves and protecting that. So it's mainly for those two things. So we're looking location regarding the master plan, and then the master plan will also encourage amendments to the zoning regulations that will require certain use standards to protect Montrose County.
And you might want to just clarify. So if I wanted to put, a couple of solar panels on my roof, that's
correct. Yeah, it's just applicable to utility scale
size,
or commercial scale. If your intent is to sell it back to the grid, that's what it applies to. It doesn't apply to rooftop solar if you got a panel in your yard. No, it doesn't apply to that. That's still allowed.
Yeah. And so I think just to further, when you're decommissioning some of these solar panels is problematic. You want to make sure that it's done properly. You want to make sure that there's some kind of bond so that if somebody abandons the property, that the county's not stuck with having to clean that up. And there are, minerals that are in solar panels that would be of concern. So we want to make sure that it's done correctly.
Yeah, the technology in solar is changing all the time, but there's still more and more of the solar panel equipment can be just taken to the landfill, but there are certain metals and materials in the panels that need to be disposed of in a certain way. So if you have a solar developer that abandons a facility, that could cause some harm down the road if it's not reclaimed properly. And like you said, Montrose County can't be footing that bill. Some sort of requirement for a bond or letter of credit, some security.
Yeah, it shouldn't fall on the taxpayers.
For the taxpayers.
Yeah, to have to come up with that. So, I just wanted to further, because I've had people say, why are you still prohibiting solar? And I think part of this, even the master plan, requires us all to be thoughtful and think about the future of our community and what we want our community to look like. And I want it to be as great as it was when I first got here. And that doesn't mean no change, but it means that we need to be thinking about how well we do these things.
Make sure we're protected and protecting everyone.
Yeah. And I know that I've had questions about how come we just don't put a bike lane down Highway 50 all the way to Ridgeway? How come we don't put a bike lane all the way down 50 all the way to Ridgeway?
I don't know. We don't. Do you mean like on the highway, on the shoulder? Yeah. Or kind of how they have it south of town where there's a little path?
That's kind of a bad place to. It's kind of heavy traffic.
I guess to each their own. I guess. But, it's
Is there some issue with access? Because if we don't have access in the county, we couldn't just put a bike lane down there if we wanted to.
It's a CDOT right of way, so it'd be up to them. It's either CDOT right of way or private property where we'd need hundreds of property owners to agree to some certain easement, and then there's a maintenance question that I don't think that's been figured out yet. We don't have a parks department to maintain it. Public Works deals with road and bridge, but adding a bike lane to that could be on the table. It definitely could be. But
in the future, it certainly.
And the master plan will speak to that. Transportation in Montrose County is mainly designed around vehicles, but it would speak to multimodal transportation, mass transit, all points transit, bike routes, things like that.
Yeah, and I think that's important too to just mention here. You mentioned at the beginning just that we do have a transportation plan that accommodates for traffic flows and things like that. Years ago, there were some arterials that were suggested, and at that master plan in 2005, I think it was, people were not happy with what the suggestions were. So that came off the table because we do listen to what the constituency wants. I mean, what do people in Montrose County want? What's best for our community? I think this has been really useful and helpful. Did we miss anything about planning and development that we need to talk a little bit about?
I think there's a lot we could talk about. The probably not appropriate for right now.
That's really boring but important.
Oh yeah, I could bore you all to tears. I guess I would just reemphasize the two plugs. One, if you're interested in volunteering for the community, consider joining the Planning Commission. Give us a call. Give me a call if you're interested in that. Have some questions about it. Also, get involved with the master plan. And if you're not involved in the master plan, if you get here after October and it's already done, there will be another one. But before do your due diligence.
Yep.
The master plan is a great document, as a house is a lot of people's largest financial and health investment, right? So do your due diligence before, to make sure you know kind of what's planned around that area before you get
I
there.
love that. I hope that's something that everybody asks when they come to the planning department is, what else is going on around here? I think that when you move into a new community, you make some assumptions and you don't ask about all the other things. We also have the Code of the West that we've talked about, I think, in a previous County Talk episode, but where we really respect our ag, and that's part of the land use. We are a right to farm county, and so we want to make sure that we're always looking out for that interest. And so we want people to know that there could be dust, and sometimes there's smells, and sometimes there's actually sheep and cattle on the road. And I think we're going to have to add something on how you drive through animals. So I think that's going to be the next chapter in the Code of the West.
How to drive through sheep on the road.
Yeah, you don't just stop for an hour and a half. You actually, so
keep moving.
We'll have to do some lessons on that. So, in closing, I want to ask you what I love that we have so many people in Montrose County that are employees that are very passionate about what they do. Why do you love what you do? And I mean, tell me.
That's a great question. I think what I love what I do most about my job is what got me into planning. I was a math and science guy in high school, so when any of those career assessment tests came up, they said engineering or architecture, something like that. So when I got to school and learned a little bit about how engineers tend to stay in their office a little more, no shots at any engineers, but an alternative, construction management or planning, was more people-based and people-oriented. That's what I love about my job. It's fun to interact. We have interactions over the counter every day, over the phone, over email, and it's fun. I love interacting with the people, and we have great people in Montrose County. So
yeah, we really do, and even I've noticed, I'm sure this comes as a super surprise to people, but sometimes people are not happy, and wow. I love the way you interact with them and respect their differences and their opinions and what needs, and you talk it through with them as opposed to shying away from those interactions.
There's I forget the exact quote, but on Parks and Rec, Leslie Knope says something about when someone's yelling in my face, I take it as them being passionate loudly at me, something like that.
Caring loudly.
Caring loudly,
yeah.
That's what it is. So, I feel like I have a good perspective in being able to understand that this is important to everyone. So, and I like trying to find the balance and meeting people's needs. So.
Yeah, I think I feel the same way. It's people they care loudly, and that's okay. That's our job as a public servant. So, so we want to meet people to know that there's master plan. There's 4 meetings: Olathe, Montrose Mayor, and the West End. You can find all that on Facebook. You can also find it on our website. It's all available. Call us if you have any questions. Call Tallmadge if you want to be a planning commission candidate. We have an application process that's easy to fill out right online. If you go to our website under boards and commissions, you can find that. But if you want to know what to do beforehand, Tallmadge is happy to talk to you about that, so you know what to expect. They meet monthly? Yeah,
monthly. Now we're meeting 2 to 3 times a month because the master plan is a big deal and it's their thing. But typically it's monthly. Yep.
Yeah, and the planning commission is passionate too. I'm proud of them, of what they do. Yeah. So thanks for taking the time.
Yeah,
I know you have some more planning to do, but we appreciate helping the public understand what this is all about and why it's important, and that they can call us anytime. I think that's really critical to know that you're always available by phone, by email. I'll walk in, say hello. He likes people, just heard that. So anyway, thank you for what you do. Thank you for allowing us to have this conversation, taking the time to talk a little bit about planning. So that wraps up another episode of County Talk. I hope you also learned something about planning and development and kind of how the process works. And If you didn't get to listen to the entire podcast, then shoot Tallmadge an email or give them a call, and you can learn even more. And if you'd like a copy of the zoning regs, I'd be happy to share those with you. So be involved in the future of the growth of Montrose County. Go attend one of the master planning sessions, or if you can't attend, the dates don't work for you, shoot any of us an email with your suggestions. We'd love to help you with that. So that wraps up another episode of County Talk. We'll see you next time.